Hey, I'm Susan Snipes-Wells, and we are on this misty, moisty March afternoon on Snipes Farm in Morrisville, PA, and doing a gardening video today, sort of how to get started, how to begin thinking about. So you want to have a garden. I grew up here at Snipes Farm, and by way of credentials, I suppose I learned a lot of gardening information just by osmosis, being a little kid. But beyond that, I did attend Penn State's ornamental horticulture program way back in the 80s, and helped to run our big garden center here on the farm that went for 50 years and closed down in the early 2000s. Since then, we are Snipes Farm and Education Center, focusing on lots of things farming and vegetables. Community-supported agriculture, a farm market on Saturday mornings. I spend a lot of my time overseeing the fruit production here on the farm. And I'm going to pass this over to my delightful friend, Carolyn Dorff.
Hi, and so my name is Carolyn Dorff, and I grew up in southeastern Pennsylvania. I've lived here my whole life, except for brief stints away for college. And I grew up not the way Susan did on a farm, but in a suburban household. And my father always had a garden, and I kind of watched him garden. I loved gardening. And then as I got older and got my own home, I thought I wanted to start a garden. And it was hard. I made a lot of mistakes. I probably spent a lot of money on stupid things. So as I've gotten older, I have become a master gardener with Penn State Extension, and I'm also a master watershed steward. And I've tried to learn a lot. So Susan and I are here today to try to pass on some of our knowledge to you, to try to make it easier, but also have fun. So where should we start, Susan?
Well, I think we ought to start with, I want to start a garden.
Okay.
What do I need? What do I do?
Well, I think we need to talk about making yourself comfortable in a garden, because if it's uncomfortable, you're not going to want to do it anymore. I found this out. So you're going to want to have your hat. You're going to want to have your sunscreen and your bug spray, and if those gnats are bothering the heck out of you, spray the bug spray on the rim of your hat.
Yeah.
You have to have a trowel, and one thing I'm going to just tell you is if you're in your garden, a good thing to do is maybe put some yellow duct tape around the handle of your trowel, because I am always losing my trowel in the garden, and I'm getting up and I'm going back into the house and going, where did that trowel go when I come back out?
That's a great idea.
It helps you find it. And I think you have to decide, how big do I want my garden? And I was talking to a lady the other day, and she said, I've never gardened, I'm dying to garden, I've never even gardened in pots, what do I do? So you just want to think about, how big is your space? How much do you want to take on? Do you want to do some pots, which are very easy to start with? And later today we're going to be showing you how to do a very simple pot. And do you want to go into the ground? Do you want to dig it right into the ground? Do you have a piece of ground outside you want to do it in? Or do you want to do a raised bed? And there's some examples of raised beds in this garden here at Snipes. Any other suggestions, Susan?
Actually, I happen to be in the children's garden. Let me grab this trowel. Since you just mentioned a trowel, Carolyn, this is a really decent one, just from a regular hardware store. But this will come in really handy, even this time of year when you're just kind of going after weeds as a way of getting ready for planting right into the soil. We're in the children's garden here at Snipes Farm, which, it's what, the 20s of March. We haven't really even put a spade in the ground out here yet. And our first job will be to actually clear our garden beds of weeds. We have some raised beds out here. We've got, this is a straight into the ground area. There's a lot of perennials that they're about to pop forth. You can just barely see the leaves. So there's a lot of raking and cleaning up that we need to do in this garden. Here's another great example. Carolyn just mentioned planters. We took some old horse troughs. Not everybody has an old horse trough, but we just got the potting soil right into that and planted it out with flowers last spring.
put into the ground every single year. Perennials you can put into the ground and they'll come back up the following spring. Now some people have this idea that, oh, if I put a perennial in, I will never ever need to plant the perennial again, but that's not true. Some perennials are very long-lived and they'll live for many, many years, 20 years, etc. But some perennials are just very short-lived and they just are there for 2 to 3 years. And then there's also a plant called a biennial. As a beginner gardener, I don't know whether you would be planting that or not, but it is a plant that comes up, and it's usually a flower, comes up the first year as just leaves, and then the second year you get this beautiful flower from it. So, and then it dies and goes to seed. So those are the different kinds of plants that you can put into your garden.
Right.
But maybe what we should do is come over and talk soil, and I'm going to move this so that you can see all the different kinds of soil. And when you think about soil, you want to think about plants and their roots, and you want the plant to be as healthy and happy as possible, and so that the roots can expand and grow as much as possible, right, Susan?
Yeah.
So you don't have compacted roots. You want the harvest to be as best as you can have. So if you're planting a tomato, you want a really good tomato. You don't want a tomato that looks horrible. So good soil is what's really important. So I'll start with a couple, and then Susan, you'll take over. First, there's soil. Actually, I'm going to call it dirt. As a master gardener, my mentor said, never ever call this dirt. But I'm going to call this dirt because this is clay. And clay, it's hard for plants to grow because look at it. It turns into
you can make
a thick
a ball
ball
out of it.
And
you can make a clay bowl out of this, and guess what they do? They hold water.
They hold water, and the plant eventually succumbs to the dies. It says, I can't have all this water around my root. And then this is sand. Well, some plants like succulents love sand, and that's how they grow in sand because they don't want any water. They want the water to come through and go out, and they're very good at holding their own water, which is why they're kind of fleshy or cactus, puffy with thorns. They do very well with this kind of soil. And then Susan, I'm going to
But this is just too porous.
Yep.
This isn't straight sand, but it's pretty close.
It's pretty close.
And so think the beach, and that's just not a great environment for your average tomato plant.
Tomato plant. And vegetables are sort of the prima donnas of the garden. They need a lot of attention in the way that they're planted and what kind of soil they are in. So that's why vegetable gardening is a little more interesting in some ways because you have to think about all these different things, and it's fun.
Yeah.
All right, so Susan, do you want to do those last two?
Loam. This is the primo. This is what everybody wants is nice, rich loam. This is a soil, and the way I love to describe it is it's kind of like when you pick it up, it falls through your hands like chocolate cake. That was dates back to my times at Penn State. Anyway, it falls through like chocolate cake. Of course, you can imagine how much children love it when I talk about that. They get it's just, there's something wonderful about putting your hand in good loam. Now, it can be sort of confusing to look at this beautiful dark black soil against compost. This is just straight compost. And for anybody who's ever bought a flower in the grocery store or a garden center, your plant most likely came in a pot with potting soil, and it's very, very lightweight. This we made ourselves out of, I always like to say one person's trash is another person's treasure. And on the farm, the treasure we love is old straw and old leaves and people's kitchen leftovers, and because it makes, believe it or not, that stuff made this. And this is just a gardener's dream as an additive to your garden. So we call this organic matter, and it really is a little different in consistency from the loam, but we add them together, and oh man, that is what you want when you're putting a plant like a lettuce plant right into the ground this time of year.
So Susan, why would you not want to plant your plants directly into compost? That's a question I get a lot.
Yeah, this
at
is
master gardeners.
It's just a little too light. it won't, it doesn't, it's almost like Carolyn was describing with the sand, it won't hold soil very well. And it won't hold water very well. And so it's about the particle size, and it's about the consistency of true soil, that it actually is going to hold moisture and yet let it drain through. This, of course, will hold moisture, but it won't let it drain through, so you're going to drown your little roots because there's just no porosity in clay. So it's the porosity of good loam, and then it's this rich, this has nutrients in it, which are just going to aid the root development of a plant. I don't know, what else would you say about it?
I'd say that the loam is kind of a mixture of all of this. In a sense, you want a tiny bit of clay in your soil to help it retain water, but you don't want too much.
Right. So
you want a tiny bit of sand maybe to help it also with its drainage.
But don't sweat it. Don't go out and buy it.
No. Some people make their own soil, and they're really into that, and that's very interesting. If you are just starting your garden, probably the best thing to do is you can go to the garden center. This is just one particular brand I bought, but you can buy any of them. And you just want to buy something called potting soil. And it is a lightweight mix that's great for plants.
For pots.
And for pots. And you want it to be lightweight because, my God, once you get that in here and you're lugging this thing around, it's pretty heavy. So you want a lightweight soil. Also, that when you're watering in a pot, it's not absorbing a lot of water and wrecking the plants. So, I think the next question is, Susan, when do you want to start a garden? This is a good time to be out here because we are just at the beginning of the growing season here in southeastern Pennsylvania.
Right.
So when would I start my vegetable garden? What vegetables would I put in there right now? If I was outside tomorrow, what would I do?
Well, we're, of course, talking about cool weather vegetables.
Yes.
What can take it? So what's happening right now with our temperatures? Other than that, today is high 60s. It's a little warm maybe for March, but we've got cool nights, warming days. Soil temperature is still pretty cool. It's right now. Actually, my husband measured ours yesterday because he's putting out lettuce.
Good.
And he found that it was 51 degrees, so that's interesting. Actually, St. Patrick's Day, the old wives' tale is that's when you can plant your peas directly into the ground. So you could be doing that if you're really dying to get something going. Put your little pea seeds right into the ground directly. But other than that, this time of year, if you go to a reputable garden center that knows what they're doing, and I only say that because if you find a tomato plant in a garden center, no. That doesn't go out till May. So what you should be finding right now are anything in the cabbage, broccoli, the cole family, C-O-L. What else?
Leafy greens.
And any leafy greens.
And leafy greens. Lettuce you could do right now.
Yep. Spinach, but that's probably a direct seeding issue.
Spinach is direct seeding, and just to let you all know, spinach likes it. The seed likes it really cold. Some people even suggest you put spinach down on the ground where there's still snow on the ground. if you've been thoughtful enough to prepare your bed last fall, because it likes to just sit there and mellow in that cold soil and the wet, and then it will sprout for you very early.
So March, season vegetables.
And I always try to get my peas in on St. Patrick's Day or around there, so I will be doing my peas tomorrow because it's going to be a beautiful day. And I'll be out in my garden. I just have to put some compost down on my garden bed first, dig it in, and so I'll get my aerobic activity in that way, which is always very good.
Always good.
So I thought today one of the things we could end with is planting a pot. And the reason I wanted to plant a pot today is my daughter, Katie, who lives in Philadelphia in this walk-up apartment, and all she has is this stairwell going up to her apartment. She's desperate for lettuce and wants to grow it herself. So I have some potting soil. I have a pot, and I bought some lettuce plants. The problem is I don't know if I have enough soil.
Right.
So let's get this open. I should have brought a scissor with me, but this will work.
That'll work.
So I think this pot's too big, Susan.
Yeah, the pot's a little bit big for exactly
I think
that.
we're going to have a problem because
We're just gonna make believe.
we're going to
Carolyn,
make believe that it's,
that
gonna,
it's full.
and we're going to have, we're going to make believe. And so we're not going to do all the lettuce plants, but what's really pretty is sometimes in the spring you may go to a garden center and you see just a pot, a small pot, but it's got all these beautiful different types of lettuce in it. And it is really pretty and it's really nice. So when you get a pack like this,
Yeah, show us how to open that up. How do I
because
get my
some
lettuce out of
people-
there?
Some people don't know how because obviously you're beginning. So you want to hold it upside down and hopefully you're going to get these plants to all come out nicely. And what you're going to see on the
So in
bottom,
this case, hold on just a second. In this case, this was just one big square block.
Right.
Sometimes you're going to find that it's actually sectioned off in little cubes for you. In this case, it's one big cube pack.
and what I would suggest is when you're taking your plants out of your pot, whoops, we just had one drop, that wasn't good, but you want to hold your fingers over the plant as you turn it over so it doesn't drop and you're not breaking stems, okay? The other thing you're going to want to look at is, oh my gosh, there's roots down here. This looks very healthy. This looks like a good loamy potting soil. So what you want to do is you want to break these roots up. And why do you do that? You want to tell the roots they're not pot bound anymore, that they have room to grow. And this will stimulate them to grow. And then when you